An injured man wakes up from a painful nightmare after hearing some comforting, gentle words. He learns that those words came from the girl taking care of him. She introduces herself as Iruru and explains that she found him badly injured and unconscious in the forest, so she brought him back to her house. Trying to think back, the man realizes that he has no memories of his past, to the extent of not even knowing his name. In addition to that, he has a strange mask stuck to his face that he cannot remove. Iruru's grandmother, Tsukuru, checks in on his health, revealing that she does not know anything about him or his mysterious mask either, suggesting that he should forget about that for now and focus on getting better. To that end, she gives him some new clothes as he had none on him when he was found. It turns out those clothes used to belong to her son, Iruru's father, but he and his wife passed away already. Although reluctant to accept at first, he is convinced to take the clothes as they seem to be a perfect fit. Aurora's little sister, Aruru, spies on him as he dons her deceased father's clothes, but the moment she gets spotted, she runs away, too shy to even introduce herself. To help him get better faster, Aruru takes the masked man out for a walk, showing him around the village while acting as his support. Using that chance to take a closer look at her, he notices that Aruru has strange fluffy, almost animal-like ears and a tail. To check if it is real, he grabs her tail, which provokes an embarrassed reaction from her. It is then that a bulky man named Turo shows up, introducing himself to the masked man, interested to see who that new strange arrival in the village is. He explains that this is a tiny and peaceful village, which the masked man notes that there are quite a few damaged houses. Turo tells him that a big earthquake happened a few days prior which caused the damage, and it is after the earthquake that Iruru found him in the forest. The masked man thinks back about an earthquake, but is unable to remember anything. Suddenly, Turo's wife, Seppaku, arrives, giving him an earful for slacking off from work. Upon taking a closer look at the masked man, she teases Iruru how she finally found herself a man. On the other hand, the masked man notices that everyone seems to have fluffy ears and a tail of some sort. After checking out the entire village, Iruru and the masked man take a break. It is then that Iruru hears a commotion coming from the village and hurries ahead to see what is going on. The commotion is caused by Nuwangi, who came with a small unit of the local Lord Sestent men to take resources from the village as tribute. Despite originating from the same village, Nuwangi treats the locals horribly, threatening them with violence if they do not comply. He has feelings for Iruru, so he tries to take her with him by force, but at that moment the masked man catches up and intervenes. Nuwangi's threats mean nothing to him, and his indifferent attitude pisses off Nuwangi. Iruru tries to defuse the situation by stepping in between them, but her effort only makes Nuwangi even more jealous, as she starts defending the masked man. To vent his frustrations, Nuwangi goes after the masked man, but the masked man easily stops Nuwangi's fist. At that point, the masked man declares that he considers Iruru to be his family now, as she has saved his life, and in that regard, he will do whatever he can to protect her. This makes Nuwangi take his men and leave in a hurry. On their way back home, the masked man is worried that he said something which made Iruru upset, as she has become very quiet. But she sets his mind at ease by telling him it is quite the opposite, and she is happy to have heard those words. To vent all of those frustrations, Nuwangi destroys a small shrine on his way out of the village. This causes something in the surrounding forest to stir, and all the nearby wildlife runs away in fear. The destruction of the shrine becomes apparent to the villagers, and they hold a meeting to try and figure out who would do such a thing. As it turns out, the shrine was there to keep the Mutakapa at bay, a large and powerful creature that is sent to protect the forest. Knowing that this will anger Mutakapa, the villagers are fearful, as they cannot rebuild the shrine due to heavy rain. Later in the night, when Iruru changes the masked man's bandages, he has a frightening flashback to a memory he cannot entirely recall. Iruru calms him down and reassures him that everything will be okay, telling him how for now he has to relax and focus on getting better. He thanks her for comforting him, stating how her words put his mind at ease. During the same night, the torrent of rain stops and loud roars can be heard from the forest. In the morning, it is revealed that Mutakapa attacked a nearby village just after the storm had passed, and so the masked man tags along with Tiro and a few other villagers to the destroyed shrine. Although they are still worried about the masked man's injuries, he keeps insisting on helping them, and thanks to his help, the shrine is rebuilt within the day. However, that proves to be of little use as Mutakapa attacks the village as soon as they return. Seeking shelter in their home, the masked man, Iruru, Aruru, and Tsukuru cannot do anything but listen to the sounds of Mutakapa raging through the village. When the noise quiets down, the masked man goes out first to check, but ends up running into the Mutakapa as she is feasting on a poor family which home she broke into. She takes notice of the masked man and attacks him. Trying to defend himself, he uses a nearby pitchfork, but Mutakapa's fur is too tough and his improvised weapon is broken with the first strike. Because of that, he gets hit by Munakapa and is unable to get back on his feet. Fearing for the masked man's life, Aruru comes to his side to try and help, but she is too weak to move him. Just as Munakapa is closing in on them, it starts to rain once more. Instead of finishing them off, Munakapa suddenly turns around and runs away into the forest. Relieved that they are saved, the masked man apologizes to Aruru for getting them into such a dangerous situation. The villagers have an emergency meeting lamenting the deaths caused by Munakapa's attack. It is during that meeting that the masked man reveals why Munakapa ran away when it started to rain. It turns out her fur becomes very brittle when wet. This surprising discovery makes them determined to bring the fight to Munakapa and prevent her from harming the village ever again. After setting up a trap to lure her into, the masked man goes with Tiro to serve as bait. Their plan succeeds and the monster is lured into the watery trap. This weakens its fur and the villagers' crude weapons are able to pierce it. The masked man delivers the finishing blow, taking Munakapa's life. Everyone returns to the village. Even though they succeeded, they feel sad that they had to put down the guardian of the forest. Suddenly, Aruru raises an alarm stating how Aruru has disappeared. After a short search, Aruru turns up on her own, but to everyone's surprise, she has with her Munakapa's young cub. Knowing the cub will not survive on its own, Aruru brought it back to the village, but the villagers are less than happy to see it. The masked man puts their minds at ease, telling them how the newborn cub did not commit any sins. This diffuses the situation and the villagers accept that Aruru will be taking care of the cub from here on out. Because of that, Aruru starts to warm up to the masked man, thinking of him as her new father. Witnessing his noble spirit, Tuchikuru decides to give the masked man the name of her deceased son, Hakoro. That way, he will have a name until he remembers his own. Just as things are calming down in the village and Hakoro is showing the villagers how to create fertilizer, a wave of deserters from the war arrives. Tuchikuru explains how there are countries at war, but this village is far away from the fighting, so they never get involved. Since they are all injured and hungry, Tuchikuru decides to give them food and shelter for the time being. In the middle of the night, Aruru wakes up Hakoro, worried about Tuchikuru, who has been taken away by someone. Hakoro tells Aruru to stay and watch over Aruru while he gives chase, following the tracks left behind. Suddenly, he gets ambushed by an unknown man who orders him to turn back. However, Hakoro is not intimidated and a fight breaks out. Luckily, Tuchikuru steps in before anything happens, reprimanding the unknown assailant for his behavior. She explains that she has a certain patient whom she visits in secret every now and then, and this person escorts her there. He introduces himself as Oboro and is surprised to hear Hakoro's name, but hearing that Tuchikuru gave him that name, he decides not to pry into it. Hearing that Aruru is worried about her, Tuchikuru allows Hakoro to accompany her, despite Oboro's protests. Soon it becomes clear why she keeps this a secret from others, as the place they arrive at is a military base hidden deep in the woods. There they meet with Oboro's sister, Yuzuha. She is blind and suffering from a terminal illness, so Tuchikuru often comes by to check up on her and give her medicine. After checking on her condition, Tuchikuru goes to have a few words with Oboro, leaving Hakoro and Yuzuha on their own. The two of them get to know each other better and Yuzuha takes a liking to him, making him promise he will come visit her again in the future, much to Oboro's dismay. With the checkup done, Tuchikuru and Hakoro head back home. Aruru is greatly relieved upon seeing the two of them return. Tuchikuru apologizes for keeping her in the dark and tells her about the patient she had to visit. The next morning, the supplies that were taken away by Nuwangi suddenly reappear back at the village, with no one knowing how they got there. It turns out that this is Oboro's way of repaying Tuchikuru for taking care of Yuzuha. Not too long after that, on a rainy night, Yuzuha's condition gets worse, so Tuchikuru is summoned to go visit her at once. Accompanied by Hakoro once again, she makes haste and upon arriving realizes how badly Yuzuha's condition has deteriorated. Luckily, she has some special medicine, which stabilizes her condition rather quickly. Tuchikuru explains how Yuzuha will continue to have relapses like this one until one of them finally kills her, as the medicine she just used is extremely rare and expensive, so she has only for a few doses left. Once Yuzuha wakes up, they decide to keep the severity of her situation a secret, so she will not be burdened by the knowledge, as the medicine makes her feel better than ever. To acquire more medicine, Oboro infiltrates the mansion of the local lord to steal from, but gets discovered along the way. While making his escape, he runs into a confident and composed soldier who takes him on in a one-on-one duel. The soldier easily bests Oboro, giving him a short lesson on predictability in the process. But instead of capturing or killing him, the soldier just continues on his way, leaving Oboro behind. Wondering who the soldier is, Oboro introduces himself and is shocked to find out he just fought Banawi, a samurai general himself. The next day, Hakuoro is out gathering honey with Aruru when they run into the unconscious Oboro in the woods. They patch him up and he thanks them once he regains his senses, giving them a warning that he is being pursued before heading back to his hideout. Returning to the village, they are suddenly visited by the local lord, Sasen, who is accompanied by Nuwangi and a few soldiers. It turns out that a thief broke into Sasenti's mansion last night, and they believe that this village is sheltering him. Tusukuru denies any such accusations and opposes Sasenti, to which he responds with ordering her arrest. This enrages the villagers and things get heated when Aruru starts throwing rocks at Sasenti. The little cub, whom Aruru named Mukuru, also joins in and assaults the lord. One of the soldiers responds by attacking Aruru, but Tusukuru steps in just in time to save her, taking the blow herself. This escalates the situation and Sasen orders a fast retreat before the enraged villagers get a chance to retaliate. Everyone is worried about Tusukuru, who has fainted from the injury, so Aruru and Aruru are taking care of her. Once she regains her senses, she realizes that she will not survive this, so she spends her last moments with her two granddaughters, telling them how much she loves them and how important it is that they always remain good to each other. Calling for Hakuoro, she asks of him to watch over them in her stead, and before long she draws her final breath with a smile on her lips, stating how she has no regrets. Her death greatly upsets Aruru and Aruru, who are overcome by grief. The news of Tusukuru's death is delivered to Oboro by Hakuoro himself, and Oboro ends up blaming himself for this. Telling Hakuoro to take care of Yuzuha, Oboro attacks the lord's mansion all by himself, determined to take revenge for Tusukuru or die trying. Although he is a capable fighter, he gets overwhelmed by sheer numbers of defending soldiers and ends up captured. Back in the village, the fire of vengeance is sparked and the villagers are willing to make Sasen and his men pay for what they did. Once news of Oboro's actions reach them, the pot boils over and they are ready for war. Asking of Hakuoro to lead them, they take up arms and assault the mansion, joined by Oboro's trusted twin archers Gura and Dori, while Aruru and Aruru remain behind to watch over Tusukuru's body. As the assault on the mansion is in progress, Benawe visits Oboro in the dungeons, bringing him news of the attack. After telling him that the villagers will need his support, he decides to set him free. And with his trusty subordinate, Kuro, the samurai general, abandons the mansion, returning to report to the emperor. With Oboro joining the battle for the mansion, the soldiers get overwhelmed and Sasen falls. It is Hakuoro who delivers the finishing blow, while Nuwanji manages to escape from the mansion, justifying himself in his mind and placing the blame for everything on Hakuoro. After the fighting has ceased, Hakuoro reprimands Oboro for trying to throw his life away by going alone. He knows that the emperor will respond to this uprising in force, and they need to be ready for even more fighting if they wish to survive. This long day takes its toll on Hakuoro, and exhaustion catches up to him. Luckily, Aruru is there to offer her lap for him to rest his head on, singing a lullaby as he drifts to sleep. In response to the recent uprising, Emperor Inkara, who also happens to be Sistanti's older brother, orders Benawe to raise the villages and massacre villagers until they learn that this country belongs to him. After capturing Sasanti's mansion, Hakuoro and the rest enjoy a brief respite. Mukuru is growing at a rapid pace, surprising everyone at how fast he matures. Suddenly, Oboro arrives with Yuzuha and all of his troops. He pledges himself to Hakuoro, as he had saved his life and has proven to be a competent leader. Hakuoro accepts his pledge under the condition that he never tries to throw away his life again. Aruru and Aruru get to meet Yuzuha for the first time, and Yuzuha notes how Aruru has the same scent as Tusukuru. They spend time together, with Aruru taking over Tuskuru's role and keeping an eye on Yuzuha's health. The villagers train day in and day out, but many of them are old and unfit for battle, despite that they know that the Emperor's retribution will come their way, so they have no choice but to keep training. Noticing that the numbers he had written down about their supplies do not add up, Hakuoro decides to check out the storage. Accompanied by Aruru, they find Aruru blocking the door. She does not want them to enter, but Aruru moves her out of the way after they hear a ruckus coming from within. It turns out it is Mukuru who is causing the ruckus, as well as the shortage of food. The reason why he is so hungry is because he is going through a shocking growth spurt, and he is already the same size as his mother, Minakapa, was. Aruru is upset at Aruru for allowing Mukuru to eat so much, as it will cause a food shortage, but Hakuoro takes Aruru's side, reassuring Aruru that it will all work out. The next day, Hakuoro and Oboro go on a scouting trip to check up on a nearby village, accompanied by Gura and Dori. Oru wants to come along as well, but Hakuoro tells her to stay back, so she would not get in danger. Arriving at the village, they find it razed to the ground. Suddenly, Benawe, Kuru, and his soldiers appear. A fight breaks out, but Hakuoro's side is no match for Benawi and his well-trained soldiers. Just as it seems that Hakuoro will be captured, Aruru appears riding on Mukuru and jumps in to protect him. Benawi confuses Mukuru for the Munakapa and decides to pull back. Before leaving, he has a short conversation with Hakuoro, trying to gauge what kind of person he is. Oboro is determined to not let them leave, but Hakuoro stops him, explaining that it was not Benawi's men who torched the village, as he does not seem to be someone who would do such a thing. After leaving the village ruins, Hakuoro reprimands Aruru for not listening to him, but despite that, he is glad that she did. Back at the Emperor's palace, Benawi is berated for his failure, and because of that, he is removed from his position as the samurai general, which is passed on to none other than Nuwanji. Nuwanji is trying to flex his new position over Kuro, even trying to bribe him to become his underling. But Kuro has no respect for Nuwanji and even gets close to killing him on the spot. Benawi happens to come by just in time to defuse the situation, calling on Kuro to come with him, as they have received new orders. Back at the mansion, refugees from other villages have begun gathering, forced to flee from danger of the Emperor razing their homes. Hakuoro welcomes them under the condition that they train and become soldiers, so they would join him when the time for battle comes. They agree and settle in their new home. One day, a shady person gets caught while snooping around. After he is brought before Hakuoro, he introduces himself as a humble merchant who used to do business with the local lord before. Although he is quite suspicious, Hakuoro decides to welcome him and allow him to trade quickly before sending him off, as staying here would put him in danger in case of an attack. Just as the merchant is leaving, he suddenly draws a hidden knife and warns Hakuoro that if he were an assassin, he would have taken his life by now. Dismissing it as a joke, he simply warns Hakuoro that he is not cautious enough before giving him a parting present and leaving. Benawi and Kuro are guarding a checkpoint when the alarm is raised. An injured villager is trying to get through. When the two of them catch up with the fleeing villager, Benawi decides to let him go. It is then that the shady merchant from afar appears, revealing that his name is Sekinero and he was sent by Benawi to spy on Hakuoro. After taking the report from the merchant, Benawi pays him his due and allows him to vanish into the night. At the mansion, Hakuoro and the villagers are planning their next move, but they are short on men, so they cannot take the checkpoint. Suddenly, the injured villager that got past the checkpoint arrives, bringing news from other villages. They have all had enough of the Emperor's tyranny, and they will join forces with Hakuoro's group when they decide to strike. This is exactly what they needed to make their move, so under the cover of night, they launch their assault at the checkpoint. The battle turns bloody as they are met with heavy resistance, with massive casualties on both sides. But Benawi is a skilled general, and he manages to get the upper hand with his well-trained troops. Benawi charges straight for Hakuoro and yet again gets the better of him. Just as it seems that Hakuoro's forces will be defeated, the reinforcements arrive and flank the enemy, turning the tide. Finding himself outmaneuvered, Benawi orders a full retreat, abandoning the checkpoint. Emperor Inkara is extremely displeased with the results as Benawi returns. But instead of listening to the Emperor's lecture, Benawi gets upset that his rule is hurting the people, who are the foundation of every empire. Inkara does not take criticism well and throws Benawi into the dungeon, leaving his forces entirely in control of Nuwanji. With the checkpoint destroyed, Hakuoro's forces join up with other villages and start racking up victory after victory against the Emperor's soldiers. During one quiet night, Hakuoro is enjoying some quality time with Aruru and Yuzuha, when Oboro brings news of another village getting attacked nearby. It is Nuwanji, and he is ordering his troops to slaughter all the villagers. But before they can do so, Hakuoro's forces arrive and engage them in battle. Nuwanji's troops are routed quickly, and he is captured before he can escape. Bringing him back to the mansion, they deliberate what they should do with him after everything he caused. Even Nuwanji is prepared to die. Knowing that he is Aruru's childhood friend, Hakuoro leaves his fate up to her, and she decides to set him free. Even though the villagers are shocked by her decision, no one questions her, as she is loved by the people. And so battle after battle, Hakuoro's troops make it all the way up to the Emperor's palace. Inkara is still not bothered by a bunch of villagers attacking his home, and he orders his remaining forces to handle it while he indulges in more opium. Without any leadership, the soldiers get overrun and Hakuoro makes his way into the palace with Oboro at his side. Seeing that the battle is lost, Kuro breaks Benawi out of his cell, suggesting they should use this chance to flee. But instead of running away, Benawi arms himself and states how his duty lies with this country, so he has to see it through to the end. And so Benawi and Kuro run into Hakuoro and Oboro. They clash with their full might, and for a while the battle seems to be a stalemate. But when more and more of Hakuoro's forces break into the palace, Benawi decides that it is time to end it. Breaking away from their fight, he runs to the Emperor's side. At first, Inkara thinks he has come to bring news of victory, so he gets quite the shock when he learns it is quite the opposite. Benawi states how the palace has fallen and he will perform his last duty to assist the emperor in suicide, so he would not get captured and disgraced by the enemy. Although Inkara does not want that to happen, Benawi brings his sword down upon him, taking the emperor's life. Hakuro comes just in time to see him deliver the fatal blow. It is then that Benawi also attempts to take his own life as he had failed in his duty. But Hakuro stops him, ordering him to live on and work to make things right instead of taking the easy way out. Deciding to follow his command, Benawi returns together with Hakuro from the throne room. Together, they declare that the emperor is dead and the country has fallen, which puts an end to all the fighting. Even though the Solidars are dejected from defeat, everyone celebrates that all the brutal fighting has finally come to an end. In a faraway place, humanoids with angelic wings learn of the country's downfall and its new beginning, as it is now known as Tusukuru. Although they still do not know the name of the new emperor, they decide to send a delegation there as soon as possible to see what their intentions are. With all of the fighting coming to an end, many of the villagers that joined Hakuro return back home, and Hakuro gets busy governing over all of the land they took over. Suddenly, the delegation from the High Temple of Witsalnamitia arrives. Benawi explains that they are called the Onkamiya Mukai and have made it their duty to mediate relations between nations. Upon meeting with Hakuro, the two mediators introduce themselves as Urtori and Munto. In addition to being a mediator, Urtori happens to also be a princess. Hakuro wonders why someone of her rank arrived, and she explains that she wishes to build a friendship with his country. To that end, she wishes to have a look around the city and see how the people are doing now that the war is over. Since Hakuro is busy with governing duties, he assigns Iruru to be their guide. With Iruru showing them the bustling city, Urtori is pleasantly surprised at how cheerful everyone is. Late in the night, Hakuro finishes work for the day when he suddenly finds another angelic girl sleeping in his bed. Startled by being found out, the girl with black wings tries to use magic to turn invisible, but she fails to maintain the spell. Embarrassed, she tries to run away, but is cornered by Mukuru, who came with Iruru, as she wanted to sleep in Hakuro's bed. Urtori also shows up, stating how she felt a familiar aura coming from his room. It turns out that the mystery girl is none other than Urtori's little sister, Kamyu, who refused to be left behind. Apologizing for the trouble, Urtori begs Hakuro to be lenient, but instead of being upset, he simply welcomes her as another member of their delegation. Kamyu spots Iruru and immediately decides that she wants to become her friend, so she tries to get close to her every single day. Although Iruru is slow to open up to strangers, Kamyu's persistence eventually pays off and Iruru accepts her. They get friendly with Yuzuha as well, and the three of them become fast friends, always going around and playing together with Mukuru. Hakuro finds them together as they are taking a nap after an eventful day and wishes that such peaceful days could last forever. But the time for them to say goodbye comes and Kamyu leaves with the rest of the delegation as they return home to report what they learned of this newfound country. One day, an armed envoy from another empire arrives, bringing the word of their emperor, Nao. It is an ultimatum that declares how their land is henceforth under Nao's rule. Hakuro tries to avoid immediate hostilities, so he negotiates some time for them to process the demand and formulate a response. Benawi is well informed and tells Hakuro and Oboro how Nao's empire is far larger and has a vastly superior army compared to theirs. Out of precaution, Hakuro gives orders to prepare and bolster their defenses. His precautions prove to be warranted as soon thereafter Nao's forces attack, punching through the border and starting the invasion. To stop them from advancing, Hakuro places Benawi in charge of the troops, while he prepares a trap for them in a fortress that will be on their way. Iruru is worried about Hakuro and wonders what he has planned as she sees him making a deal with the shady merchant Sikanero, but he does not tell her the details of his plan, deciding it is better to not burden her with the knowledge. Heading out to put his plan into motion, Hakuro waits for Nao's troops to attack Benao's fortress, before sending Oboro to infiltrate their backlines where they store the supplies for their army. Overcome by worry, Iruru and Aruru ride on Mukuras, back to catch up with Hakuro. It turns out that Iruru had a very bad feeling about this operation and just had to be there in person to see what Hakuro does with her own eyes. Seeing her earnest desire to share his troubles, Hakuro gives in and tells her how he created some special powder which will take out Nao's supply lines and force his troops to retreat. Benao's troops defending the fortress are struggling against the massive army, but suddenly the retreat is sounded and Nao's troops withdraw from the siege. Following Hakuro's instructions, Oboro had set up the trap and ran away just in time to see the entire storage blow up and get engulfed in a blazing inferno. Troops stationed there are caught by surprise as Hakuoro's forces descend upon them, taking them all out to make sure the bulk of the army is cut off from supplies. Everything proceeds smoothly until Na himself shows up. It turns out he was at the outpost expecting Hakuoro to make his move. Pleasantly surprised by the ingenious sneak attack, he promises that he will return soon to continue the war. A massive storm is raging at the sea and a boat transporting slaves is capsizing. This gives one of the slaves the opportunity to escape and she seizes it. Following the surviving sailors onto the shore, she hunts them all down and kills them without mercy. Oboro and Kuru arrive at the scene to help those caught in the shipwreck, only to find the woman standing among the dead bodies. But as they close in, she collapses, so they take her back home for questioning. Placing her into the dungeon for the time being, they hold a meeting to try and find out more about the accident on the sea. It turns out that the ship was from a country far in the south, a country that is infamous for dealing with slaves. Just as they wonder what they are supposed to do with the woman they found, she barges into the room. Introducing herself as Karura, she states that she knocked out the guards at her cell and wonders what they want to do with her now. Oboro gets ready for a fight, stating that she is a dangerous murderer who killed all of the sailors from the ship, but Karura simply tells him that they got what they deserved. Much to her surprise, Hakuoro intervenes, telling her not to worry about that right now and instead focus on getting those wounds she sustained during the shipwreck healed. Obeying his decision, she quietly returns to her cell. Iruru comes with her to check up on her wounds and the two of them get to know each other better. She reassures Karura that Hakuoro will definitely not deport her back to the slavers she escaped from, and Karura is surprised by the friendly treatment she is getting here. After seeing her every day for a while, Iruru asks of Hakuoro to let Karura leave her cell, which he happily approves as long as she does not leave the palace grounds. Thanks to that, Iruru is able to meet Karura, and the two of them get closer as well, with Karura teaching her how to make a flower necklace. However, when Iruru goes to prepare a new room for her, Karura declines and insists on staying in the cell, where she brings a large supply of sake and drinks it all by herself. One day, Uratori, Kemu, and Munta return to serve as mediators between Hakuoro and Nae, so they could do whatever they can and stop the senseless war. Uratori and Karura are surprised to see each other, as it turns out they have a history together. Despite Oboro's protests, Hakuoro decides to allow Karura to join his forces as per her own request. To test out her skills, Benawi himself chooses to fight a mock duel against her. The news about the duel spread and pretty much everyone gathers to witness the samurai general in action against a stranger. Their match begins and it becomes evident that Karura possesses unrivaled strength. However, Benawi is skilled enough to avoid her devastating blows, so she is never able to land a hit and only ends up breaking all of the swords she tries to use. Before she ends up causing any more destruction, Hakuoro stops the duel, stating how she has shown them just how capable she is. To make sure she can utilize that brutish strength, they commission Sikanero to procure a weapon suitable for her, which he does. Even though the weapon is massive and unwieldy, Karura finds it to be just perfect for her, and ends up using it with ease. To fight back against Nu, Hakuoro has decided to form an alliance with other neighboring countries. Their emissaries arrive, and with the blessing of Uratori, who is there to make the alliance official, they prepare to sign the paper. But the ceremony gets interrupted by the sudden arrival of Tiro. He raises the alarm and warns everyone of an incoming attack. It turns out their home village got attacked and he has been running ahead of the soldiers to warn Hakuoro. Everyone scrambles to meet the attacking force, but Tiro stays behind, stating how he is too exhausted from running and needs a moment to catch his breath. Thanks to the timely warning, they are able to prepare the defenses and prevent the surprise attack. But despite their unbreakable defense, the attacking soldiers continue trying to push through and reach Hakuoro. Benawi quickly notices that those soldiers do not belong to Nu and wonders where they have come from. Back inside, Tiro is all by himself as he suddenly collapses, revealing that he was in fact badly injured this whole time. As his life is fading, he sees the spirits of his wife and other villagers, making it apparent that they all have been killed by the attacking force. The attackers do not stop despite their sustained losses and continue trying to break through to reach Hakuoro until their last man is down. Just as their last man is drawing his final breath, he curses at Hakuoro, telling him that endless suffering will come his way. They all gather to bid farewell to Tiro, who passed away while everyone was busy fighting. Kuro delivers the scouting report revealing that the Iruru and Aruru's home village got burned to the ground, with no survivors left behind. Aruru does not take the news well and gets hysterical, which forces Iruru to sedate her. Seeing how unwell Iruru is, Hakuoro sedates her as well to make sure she gets some rest too. Holding a strategic meeting with Benawi, Oboro, and Kuru, Hakuoro learns that the attackers appear to be from Kecha, but their motives are unclear. Oboro demands from Hakuoro to let him avenge the innocent villagers and order an attack on Kecha, but Benawi warns that acting rashly could be disastrous at this point in time. All of this weighs heavily upon Hakuoro, who yells out for the first time to shut Oboro up, demanding silence. Late in the night, Karura brings some sake to Hakuoro, and the two of them drink together. She wonders what he did to provoke such hatred from Kecha, but he does not know, revealing to her that he has no memories of his past, with his earliest memory being that of Aruru saving him. Afterwards, Hakuoro checks up on Aruru and Aruru, steeling himself for what is to come. The next day, Ertori tells everyone that the other countries have withdrawn from the alliance, feeling uneasy about the recent development. To add to the trouble, the messenger they sent to Kecha returns badly injured, barely holding on to life. He reports that they did not want to negotiate, but instead they killed his entire unit. With his last breath, he begs of Hakuoro to avenge him and his men. Hakuoro decides that this is too much, and even Benawi agrees that it is time to act. He quickly mobilizes their forces and they march out towards Kecha. But this only plays into the enemy's hand, as Kecha has prepared a trap for them. Hakuoro's forces get surrounded by Kecha's swift cavalry, and a powerful warrior woman named Tuka makes her appearance. Declaring that she is an Evankolga on the side of justice and will slay the evil Rakshane, she charges straight for Hakuoro. Even though she cuts through soldiers with ease, she is forced to a halt when Karura steps in her way. Suddenly, Kecha's leader, Orkaken, makes his entry. He also calls Hakuoro Rakshane, revealing that the masked man is his evil brother-in-law and will be brought to justice for what he has done. Confused, Hakuoro asks just what it is that he has done, to which Orkaken reveals how Hakuoro slaughtered his own kin before he was cut down. They were surprised to learn that he survived those injuries, but now they will bring him to justice once and for all. Hakuoro is heavily burdened by that information, unable to remember if what Orkaken said is true or not. The battle comes to a standstill as Tuka faces against Karura, realizing that they will not be able to win. Thus, they decide to retreat for the day, and Benawi signals the retreat as well, since they have a lot of injured men to tend to. Back at the palace, Hakuoro is plagued by nightmares due to the toll all of this is taking on his mental state. Oboro's scouting party is tracking down the extremely mobile Kecha cavalry, but as they get ambushed by Tuka. Challenging her to a duel, Oboro finds himself on the losing end as he is unable to land a single hit on her before she brings him to his knees. Satisfied with stopping Oboro's scouting party, Tuka retreats. Returning to the palace, they hold a strategy meeting on how to pin down the enemy cavalry as they are moving around too fast. Also, the fact that one of the noble Evankolgas is on the enemy side is affecting the morale of the troops, since they have a high sense of honor and always strive to be just. Bringing their minds together, they realize that the Kecha must be using a secret bridge to cross a ravine somewhere, which allows them to be one step ahead at all times. Just as they wonder where that bridge could be, Aruru arrives and tells them the exact location of it. It turns out that she went with the Camu to gather some flowers close to her destroyed village, and that is when Mukuru picked up the enemy's scent. They followed them and found the bridge. Even though she did something dangerous, Hakuoro thanks her and pats her head in praise. Mustering his strongest troops, Hakuoro sets out towards the bridge to bring it down and cripple his foe's movement. Arriving at the bridge, they are faced yet again with Tuka and a group of Kecha's forces. But they are no match for Hakuoro's best men, and soon enough Tuka is the only one left standing. Hakuoro questions her more on what exactly it is that he has supposedly done, to which she tells him how he slaughtered his own wife and children, as well as his fellow comrades. Karura interrupts that conversation by attacking Tuka and pushing her back onto the bridge before striking it down and collapsing it underneath her feet. With the bridge gone, their mission is a success, and they return to the palace. But Hakuoro's mental state is getting worse as the things he heard about himself weigh heavily upon him. Aruru finds him drinking late in the night and sits down with him, pouring sake for him and consoling him. He tells her what he has supposedly done, but she reassures him that there is no way he is such an evil person. Although he appreciates her words, he remains concerned that he could have indeed been such a vile person before. His drinking continues every night as he tries to bury his troubling thoughts with sake. Aruru is always by his side, comforting him but also scolding him for drinking too much. Her unwavering support makes him realize just how important she is to him, and he gets worried that he might be frightening her. But she puts his mind at ease by giving him a tender hug and telling him that she will never be afraid of him and that everything is okay. The next morning, both Hakuoro and Aruru are missing from the palace as the two of them went together with Aruru on a little field trip. This break is just what Hakuoro needs, but he wonders why she is so determined to give him her support. Embarrassed, Iruru hides her true feelings and instead tells him that it is because he declared that they are family, so it is only natural. Before returning to the palace, Hakuoro spends some time playing with Iruru and Mukuru. Finally, they are able to locate the enemy, so Hakuoro decides to only mobilize his fastest and strongest troops, this time determined to not let them get away. Their armies clash on an open field and appear to be evenly matched. Kuro, Oboro, Banawi, and Karura fight together to keep Tuka locked down, while Hakuoro lures Orikaken away from the battlefield. Even though it is 4 against 1, they are unable to keep her pinned down for long and she breaks free, rushing to catch up with her lord. Hakuoro manages to bring Orikaken to a secluded place where they can talk. But Orikaken has no desire to chat and attacks, however he is no match for Hakuoro. When Hakuoro bests him, he tries to explain that he is not this Rakshane, but Orikaken remains convinced otherwise. Even when facing death, he keeps telling Hakuoro how his crimes will never be forgiven, regardless if he remembers them or not. His words, fueled with hatred and vengeance, stir something within Hakuoro, and a dark miasma engulfs his body for a moment before he snaps out of it. This is long enough to scare Orikaken beyond belief as he realizes that Hakuoro is something completely different than what he thought he was. But before he can say anything more, an arrow hits him in the back. It is Niwa who fired it. As it turns out, this entire ploy was orchestrated by Niwa, who wants to bring out the beast that sleeps within Hakuoro. In order to achieve that, he used sorcery with the help of another Onkamiya Mukai. Tuka arrives just in time to see her lord shot down by Niwa. Realizing that they were misled and used, she is overcome by grief and regret.